Welcome to another episode of Bytes. This is the third one I've done now, Andrew, in the last couple of weeks, because I'm excited about the new equipment, and I promise I'll stop talking about it, because the last two have been like, the new equipment's amazing, amazing, amazing. Welcome, Andrew Erkins.
Thank you.
To the podcast. And this is your first official podcast, I hear.
Yeah, it is. It is. Been on a few webinars, but this is the first podcast.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting experience.
You're not too nervous?
Nah.
You're a pretty cool character.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm sure we will do very well together. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Andrew.
This goes back to the whole how are you conversation. Yeah. we were talking earlier about the idea of saying how are you, and in that moment there's a million and one things that go through your head in terms of how much do I tell them and how much is too much information.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah.
Are you really? Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of where to start,
what would you're a business owner and have been for quite a long time in various businesses and various guises. What was your first business that you ran?
The first one runs a bit of a subjective word. The first business would have been freelance consulting and doing graphic design, web design, some print work, print media advertising.
So you did all the graphic stuff as well.
Yes, I started at the same place. Really loved that aspect of creating things and taking concepts of what people had in their heads and making something visual that conveyed the same message. And I think the conveying the message part was what I loved about it. But that was just me. Yep. And
how long ago are we talking when this?
Well, this would have been 20 years ago now,
a
little while. and I did that for...
So you were only 6 when you started.
Yeah, exactly right. Did that for a little while. And then got involved. Well, I built up a decent client base and started getting more into the website, the digital side as a natural evolution. Needed somewhere to put all my clients because they all need hosting with their websites, and some friends of mine that I've known for a long, long time. We're setting up a web hosting business, and I thought, hey, you guys need some clients. You know, I need some hosting. You know, so I transferred all my clients across to their hosting service, and about a week later had a moment of panic when I kind of went, I've just given all my clients to this company that I don't know whether they're going to, how they're going to run, what are they going to do? So there was an opportunity to buy into the business, and so that was number 2.
Interesting. Okay, this is Web in a Box.
Yeah, that's right. So
I use some of your services.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So this would have been 2007.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, so
11 years ago.
Yeah. And then after that, of course, there was Digit as well. So that Digit is 4.5 years old now.
So Digit Books, Xero-based bookkeeping and accountancy firm?
Bookkeeping.
So
there's so many different facets of accounting. We're looking at the information that allows business owners to make decisions about the business. So the day-to-day bookkeeping work, reconciling accounts, sending out invoices, treating bills, paying bills, payroll, that side of things, and reporting. And sort of the management accounting side, the decision-making side, but not the taxation side, which is where people usually define accountants as sitting.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So you started using Xero before you started Digit Books, am I right in saying?
Yeah, so I started using Xero with the consulting business.
Yep. Okay. That must have been in its infancy, Xero, at the time?
Early days. It was one of only 2 cloud-based solutions out there, so it was that and Sasu has been the 2 main solutions. So.
Sasu who?
Yeah.
Okay. What about, as a kid, do you remember your first kind of interaction with technology?
Yeah.
Where that sort of love of technology came from?
Yeah, so as a kid, grew up in a small mining town up in Pilbara, up north.
Oh, wow.
And 2,000 people in the town, middle of nowhere. There wasn't a lot to do. outside of whatever your imagination could take you and wherever your friend. So we used to spend a lot of time out playing sports, playing cricket outdoors, exploring the creek beds, going bush bashing and camping a lot. And I think it was at the age of 6, Dad had flown down to Perth and came back with these 2 massive, massive boxes. And I think, you can recall what it was like back then to get the old CRT monitors, monochrome, green screen. He unpacked this mammoth of a box, and that was the monitor, and then a second box, and that was the PC. What was it? 5.25 inch floppy disks at the time.
What did they hold? It was something ridiculous. The memory size on these things. Was it something tiny. K, wasn't it? Like 128K or something like that. It's just ridiculous, the change.
And Dad had brought back these 2 games, and one of them was this, and he bought a joystick as well, which is an important part of the story. And there were these 2 games that he had, and one was like a helicopter game where you had to try not to crash, basically.
Okay.
And I really loved it, and that was kind of the first experience with technology on on that kind of scale, in terms of someone built this thing and built this game. And in high school, my friends
still in Parabadoo?
No, sorry, moved down to Perth.
Okay.
So after primary school, was shipped off to boarding school. And
which school did you go to?
Aquinas.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so just on the river.
Yep.
And I was a boarder there, and my friends in year 10 took up programming principles.
Oh wow, okay.
And I had a bad case of FOMO.
Yep.
And wasn't doing the subject, but decided I wanted to teach myself programming because they were all into it, and it seemed like a fun thing to learn.
What was the language of choice back then from a coding perspective?
Basic.
Just
okay. Basic and Turbo Pascal back in the day. And a little bit of, weirdly enough, assembly.
Okay.
This is going back a long time, and it's kind of funny because those languages, well, not basic but assembler and assembly, they're quite low level languages in the sense that you're doing everything.
Okay.
You're doing, there's so much maths and other bits and pieces involved, and it's all very base logic. This goes on, this goes off. And we were building games at the time.
Oh wow, okay.
And I always look back at that and go, I think I knew more about programming then than, it's like the tools get better and better and better, and so you almost know less and less and less about what underpins it all, and it just works. Stuff just works. But all the little pieces that went into getting that tool to the sophisticated stage it's at now, where all of a sudden there's AI and there's other stuff. I reckon I knew more about how things worked back in those days. Than what I mean,
it's
now.
still binary though, isn't it? Still on and off now, but a lot quicker.
A lot quicker and a lot more complex.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast, I can't remember, the other day, and there was a guy on there talking about a new type of chip they've created, which acts in a really strange way, which is, binary is obviously 0 and 1, on and off. But this chip, when they brought it down to something like just above absolute 0, it was doing strange things. It was like a connection between the 1 and the 0. I can't remember. I'll have to try and find out about that podcast. But it was really interesting where technology is going. The binary part of it is still there, but it's disappearing, which is interesting.
Yeah, so there's more different
quantum sort of
more different states that something can hold.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that sort of stuff. You always loved technology.
Yeah.
What about the creative side then? Because you said you started doing sort of graphic design and printing. Had you always been a creative soul at heart?
Yeah, the two always went hand in hand. Again, primary school, used to love to draw, create stuff, always. And especially growing up in a small mining town where there's not much to do, your imagination, your creativity is what gets you through. You find stuff to do, you invent things, you live in this very rich world. And so those two things went hand in hand, so that through high school there's always that mix of programming and logic based, maths based disciplines, but also art and drawing and painting and everything else in between, and that creative side. And so those two things sort of went hand in hand through
It's kind
uni.
of inevitable that.
Yeah, well, kind of. I took a side turn in university, and because growing up in a mining town, it made sense to go into mining engineering.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay.
So I did a few years of that, and then realised that it wasn't where I wanted to be or what I wanted to do.
Yep.
So I moved back to Perth, and a friend of mine who had always equally been just as enamoured with art and programming and the science side, got me a job at one of the early agencies, and we were designing websites in those days.
Oh, wow,
so
okay.
that's kind of where it started. This would have been 98, 99.
Wow. Okay. What were you using to build the sites back then? Is this sort of Dreamweaver based, so purely HTML?
Yep. This was hand coding.
Wow.
Yeah. You know what? There's some habits that you still keep. I still use Notepad from time to time to write code. I still hand code things.
Oh, you do? Okay.
It's, I don't know, it's like there's an art to the science. There's an art to doing things in an elegant way and writing code in a way that has its own sense of beauty to it in its simplicity and the way in which it's written, that no one ever sees it. I don't think anyone would care if something was 0.1 of a millisecond slower because the code was more bloated.
Yeah.
But in the act of creating it, it's there's a beauty in that. It's like poetry. So.
You're a true coder at heart, for sure. You also love reading.
Yeah.
What's your favorite well-worn book that you have, that you take with you? Is there a book that you constantly come back to?
I wouldn't say there's one that I constantly come back to. There's always... What I really like is being exposed to a lot of different ideas.
Yep.
And so I love reading to learn a new point of view and see something, and then there are things that you apply, and then you hear someone else's point of view that might be opposed, and there'll be things that you still take out of that and apply. So there's nothing specific that I go back to. But I just love absorbing new information. So the last thing that I would have read would have been Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art.
Of not
of not
giving a whatever.
Yep.
I've got that one on the coffee table at home just now as well. That's an amazing book. Absolutely amazing. I've got a question that I've asked everybody that's been on the podcast so far, and it's a more business related question, obviously. If you were starting a new business, whatever that would be, and you only had $10,000 in the bank, what would you spend it on?
Knowledge, like education and learning.
Okay.
Every business that I've been involved with to date, and maybe that's a bit of the E-myth in there as well in terms of technician moving into business.
Yep.
There's a lot that you can do to build something up, but what defines whether you're successful or not really comes down to how you apply what you know.
Yep.
And so I always think the more you invest in yourself, the more you look to learn, the better, the more likely that you'll succeed. So I think even from an early stage, I'd always invest that money in learning more about what it is that I wanted to set up.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's a great answer. I mean, I think, the cliche comment, knowledge is power. I mean, it's too many people, I think you're right, go into, or just in life in general, don't know enough. And I think being able to read and absorb information and argue a point, or have an informed sort of mind is probably one of the most powerful things that you can give yourself.
There's an Andy Warhol quote floating around that going into business is one of the most creative things that you can do, and it harks back to our earlier chat about the beauty of business in terms of making lots of choices. And I think it's having the context around what those choices are to make.
Yep.
So having the knowledge to decide what's the right thing to do in this situation.
Yep.
You learn that through experience. Over time, every business, every time you make a decision, you learn whether that was the right decision or not in that moment, and in that with what information you had at hand.
Yep.
but the more you can apply to learning what you can before you start, I think the better
Helps.
set up you are. Yeah, the more it helps, rather than making those mistakes and learning the hard way.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing with business is there's always going to be mistakes made, but if you can kind of act swiftly enough and move on and learn from it, I think you're usually in a pretty good place. What's one of the biggest sort of business lessons you've been through, like a hard time, a failure of sorts that you've really has made you as a business owner now, as a successful business owner, sort of created who you are? Something that was quite hard to go through. Is there anything that you can think of?
It's probably two key things that come to mind. The first is that some people know this, not everyone knows this, is that when Ray and I first, so Ray's my business partner, he's a chartered accountant, so you know, me not with a bookkeeping background, needed someone with a strong accounting pedigree to be able to run the business with. I mean, that's a lesson in and of itself, find a good partner to go into business with. But when we first started it, we made a conscious decision that we were going to reinvest everything we made for a period of time back into the business to be able to allow it to grow and succeed.
Yep.
And in doing that, we decided not to draw anything out of the business ourselves during that time. And in theory, that's great.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But when you're having to make conscious decisions in terms of, do I feed the dog or me? You know, that sometimes that comes back to bite. So
if you didn't feed the dog, it certainly would.
Well, the dog always got fed.
I was going to say.
And so, initially we decided on a 12-month period.
Wow.
And it was just...
Okay. So like zero drawing from it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so on the side, on the side, you know, I was still doing consulting work to be able to fill the gaps, pay the mortgage and do everything else. And in retrospect, you know, that period of time of not pulling anything out of the business set the business up and allowed us to accelerate growth really, really quickly.
Yep.
But in the same way, that was a really, really difficult time. And after about 18 months, I hit a point where, so it was meant to be for 12 months. I'll go a little bit longer.
The dog's still alive. We're still going.
We're still good. After 18 months, I hit a point where the passion was waning a touch.
It was just becoming a little bit too much. It was sort of...
It was having to make a choice. Do I still want to keep doing this, or is it time to start looking at the realities of it? And, you know, so, you know, moved over to being paid a salary from within the business, and sort of that's continued on today, and now everything's fine. But yeah, looking at that, I don't regret it, and there are a lot of good lessons learned, but I wouldn't recommend that process to anyone having gone through it.
Okay. Even though you came out the other end, I suppose, a stronger person to a degree?
Well, I think if I was to do it again, the decision would be different. The decision would be make sure I have enough money up front to get through for a certain period of time.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so a different way of doing the same thing.
Yeah. What was the second one?
Oh, the second one is really something that has... It's becoming more and more relevant as we grow, is that when you first start out, you want everything to be right. You want every experience that every customer, every person that you touch to be right. You want the business to be exactly how you see it in your head.
Yeah.
And as more and more people get involved, it's harder and harder and harder to maintain that. And I think the second lesson is really about letting go and getting out of your own way.
Okay.
And as we've continued to grow, there are more and more people in the business now that are far smarter than we are, that are far more capable, that are in a better place to be able to take the business to the next level.
Yeah.
So it's being comfortable letting go of things and stepping aside.
Which it can be hard sometimes.
Yeah, and just being okay with that outcome, being okay with, you know, letting everyone else in the business decide where the business goes, and not having to be the person that controls everything.
Definitely, which I think a lot of business owners do find hard to do. I'm not going through that just now. I've kind of accepted the fact that I need, for my next stage of business, need help in growing. And I've got a guy starting next week, Victor. Hello, Victor, if you're out there. And it's somebody that's I am trusting has got the experience and the knowledge that I don't have. And yes, it's about trust, isn't it? And about, I think the letting go part is a big lesson for people, and surrounding yourself with people that can support you and are good at what they do. I mean, you can't be good at everything, even though we like to think we are. But I think it's really good that you've got and I'm in a similar boat, got a good idea about a lot of the things. But, you let somebody do that part. You let go of that part, even though you've got the knowledge behind it and you know the strategies, the sort of the workings of it. But, some people have obviously better skills in things than you do.
I think that's the balance, is knowing enough to know if everything's still okay, but being able to let go and allow other people to step into that gap and take things forward.
Yeah, it's definitely a trust thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
it's what's that old saying? If you trust something, you should let it go. That's if you love something, you should let it go. I don't remember the exact quote, but just along those same lines, it's hard to let go of something that you've built and it's so close to your heart that all you want is for this vision to be real. But then in order to allow it to grow and evolve, you have to. Yeah.
And you get to a different level of sort of, because you're enabling other people to have a say in it and to be part of it as well. So you're you're growing the kind of love, aren't you?
Yeah.
By helping people, by bringing people in and letting them be who they are. So
we had a really good chat with the team last year, and it was a bit of a philosophical change in the business. And Leah and I sat down with everyone and said that, well, where we see our roles in the business is really just as shepherds. We want you guys to decide where you want the business to go and to decide where you want to take it into new markets, into new areas, across states, into new services. You guys decide where you want to take the business, because this is as much your business as ours.
Yeah.
And I guess it's always more important for the people that are there with you on the journey to feel like they're also achieving their own dreams.
Of course.
And finding a way. The business is just a vehicle, right, for all of us on this journey. So, if everyone's going in the direction that they want to go in, well, then it's going to be an interesting journey.
That's amazing.
And we're just happy to see where it ends up.
That's great. That's great. From a technological point of view, Xero. I mean, obviously that is your focus with the business. Xero is the platform you use for bookkeeping, obviously. Xero only, which is amazing. And you have won awards.
Yeah.
Was it last year or the year before?
It would have been the year before, yeah.
From the best. Was it the top Xero bookkeeping firm in Australia? Am I right in saying?
Yeah, so at the Australian Accounting Awards, we've won the Australian Bookkeeping Firm of the Year. And then we also won Xero's Bookkeeping Partner of the Year for Australia as well. In an 18-month period, we did fairly well, which is nice.
It is nice, but it's not. It doesn't obviously define who you are. I think what you were talking about before defines who you are with the kind of vision and how you're enabling the team and the business to grow.
Well, that's the only thing that matters. And the awards are nice, but they're
it's a little bit of
they're a side. They're a consequence of what you focus on and what you care about, and not the be all and end all.
Yeah, and the digital marketing ad agency level, they love their awards as well. Everybody loves a good award, but what does it really mean? I mean, if things aren't really working or people aren't happy in the business, it means absolutely nothing. And clients, especially if your clients aren't happy. What's happening with Xero then? Is there any big changes on the horizon that you do, like inside secrets that you know about Xero? Because I've been using Xero for a long time as well, probably 7 years, I think, quite a long time. Early days, yeah. As a sole trader, and now I'm going up a level now into payroll. But what's coming up? Any news you can tell us?
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret. They've been talking about this for a while, but they're pushing to AI. And so would have been about a year ago, maybe a bit longer, where they started using machine learning to be able to start making recommendations on line items and invoices.
Wow.
And the next logical step is applying that AI and machine learning to reconciling accounts. So there's a lot of predictive stuff they do at the moment. We think that this particular type of expense that you've seen probably belongs here. Do you agree? Kind of stuff.
Yep.
But the next step is taking that one step further and saying, well, we've seen that this particular subscription to Xero has gone into subscription fees for the last 20 times. We're
just going to do
subscription fees. So there'll be more of that. And I mean, what that will, change for businesses, it'll reduce the amount of time spent with the transactional processing side, and enable people to spend a little bit more time looking at what those figures mean and where things sit for businesses. And I mean, it's a big project for them to do. There's a lot of, from a technical perspective, there's so many complications when you think about it, right? Every business will have their own chart of accounts, their own particular way in which they like to code things. And so it's really hard to develop a solution that goes across the board for all businesses. And so this is a business by business type of AI that kind of looks at what are the patterns in your business and how do you treat things and treating them the same way. So there's still a space there for bookkeepers and accountants because of that. But it will.
Well, it's the people skills, isn't it? It's the strategy. It's the helping people understand what the numbers, because the numbers are the numbers.
Yeah.
But if the budgets aren't set up correctly, if you're not forecasting, and that's something over the last couple of years that, along with my accountant, I've got much better at. And Xero has enabled that because it is from an interface point of view, is such an easy tool to look at. But you still need help in knowing which numbers you need to be looking at, and guidance with it. So that's where I think AI is a very exciting place. It just means that there's going to be different jobs for humans down the track. It's going to be more of a human to human sort of thing. It's a scary space, but quite an amazing space.
I think with any change, there's opportunity. As tech continues to change the face of every industry really, but specifically in regards to accounting and bookkeeping, as tech continues, as more things get automated, it just creates new opportunities and new avenues. You can either be the person that helps advise people in terms of what those numbers mean. You can be the person that helps connect and implement new solutions in terms of connecting cloud-based platforms as they continue to evolve faster. You learn one, there's 2 new ones that have just popped up that do similar things.
Okay.
Or you're the person that builds those tools that takes that data and turns that into insights in a way that might be specific to an industry. There's lots of opportunity out there. It's just adapting to that change and being comfortable with the fact that things will continue to change. Yeah,
definitely. And I think with Xero especially, I mean, the bigger players in the industry, the MYOBs and guys like that, were slow in the uptake, to say the least.
They were. And
to the cloud-based system. They were sort of not caught unawares, but they just didn't implement their take on it quick enough. Although they have now, obviously, there's cloud-based sort of platforms everywhere.
It's challenging for them. I mean, it's easy to be complacent when you're the incumbent, when you are the main solution that most people use. It's easy to not think about, well, what's the next step of evolution in terms of your particular industry. And so MYOB were caught out in that regard. Xero's come along, and MYOB now have a split difficulty of having to support their legacy systems as well as developing a cloud-based system. It was an interesting... they recently pulled out of a purchase of Erkins accounting, Australian accounting business, and they announced that they were going to invest money into R&D.
Okay.
And I think it was a sum of around 50 million that they were looking to invest in R&D in the next 2 years. And correct me if I'm wrong on this one. But then you look at what Xero spent over the last 10 years, and I think it's been about 430 million spent over 10 years. So about 43 million a year versus 25 million a year. And that kind of summarizes where I see the difference between how much they're willing to invest in technology and now where they're going to get to in the future. The biggest challenge, I guess, for Xero for me will be coming from QuickBooks, who have really deep pockets and they have a good product. So I think it'd be interesting to see how it evolves.
It's it was same in the graphic design industry back in the day. Do you remember Quark Express?
Yep.
That was like for desktop publishing was the number one tool.
Yeah.
Then Adobe slowly but surely sort of I think they had PageMaker originally. And then obviously InDesign came out.
Yep.
And just the whole process and how simple it was to use the Adobe suite of products, and Quark just disappeared. I mean, they had absolutely no, I don't know if they just didn't see it coming or Adobe just did such a good job. I mean,
was Quark Mac only back in the day?
There was PC versions of it when I started using it, but it was like it was just the bit of software that you needed to do any form of layout. But Adobe, I think, because it had its hand in kind of Illustrator and Photoshop, and it just seemed natural that they would then create a kind of desktop or a layout tool. And I don't even know if Quark exists anymore. I don't think it does.
No, I wouldn't know. Yeah, it's the same thing happened though with Photoshop back in the early days.
Yep.
Do you remember Oldest Photo Styler?
The name rings a bell, but I don't think I ever used it.
There was Photo Styler, there was Photoshop, and very, very similar in terms of what they could do. And I don't even know what happened to Oldest. It just vanished. But they had a very good product, and
and that's the thing. Quark did as well. It was a great product, but maybe I think complacency probably plays a bit of an element in it. Not looking into the future at all, or having anything set, or even if it's even not caring for the clients, I think, or caring for the customers is probably the big point. That they had it all. Everybody had to use them because they were the only one. Yeah. And then you've got somebody that starts caring for the clients, Adobe, and provides this beautiful suite and easy to use, and just sneaks in and takes over.
Which lasts until, I mean, that's always the trap for any large business, is to never forget that.
Exactly. Yeah. Have that mindset still. Yeah.
Yeah. That it. Yeah. I mean, there'll be other businesses. It's like in the web industry. The large web firms come and go in terms of, the guys that come in dominate the market for a period of time. At some stage, unless they continue looking after the businesses that they serve, at some point someone else will come along that looks after them for them, and that, whatever industry you're in, that'll keep happening. Yeah,
and that's, I mean, we were chatting for an hour or so before the podcast, and we talked about that. It's about care for the client. I mean, that's ultimately what businesses are there for. Obviously there's the element of you're there to make money as well. We're not hiding that fact, but the only way you can do that is through absolute care and transparency with your customer base. Not take them for granted at all. We're talking about just like popping into clients and just saying hello and being human to people. It's people talk about B2B all the time. It's not B2B at all. It's person to person at every stage, I think.
Yeah, definitely the case. It's it's one of the risks with Xero that I see as well.
Okay.
In terms of, as they continue to grow, it will be interesting to see how they address that problem, because it's a new problem to them as a growing business that has a large subscriber base. How to continually engage, and so they've just recently announced a head of community whose core role is to tackle that.
Wow. Okay.
And so it'll be really interesting to see what happens over the next few years in terms of how well they can maintain that connection, or whether there's going to be another accounting-based piece of software that that speaks to people.
Oh, definitely. We talked briefly about Photoshop before, and I want to go into photography a little bit, because you are a bit of a keen photographer. Am I right in saying?
Keen amateur, yeah.
Keen amateur photographer.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, this comes from your creative genes, but it's something you love to do, yeah.
It's a really good escape. I guess two aspects of it. It's there's something beautiful about being able to capture a moment or a scene or something at a point in time and be able to share that and remember that moment. And so photography, I love for that reason, being able to, and especially landscape photography, being able to sit on a cliff somewhere and just watch the sunset and capture that sunset. I think there's something beautiful in that. But the other aspect of photography, and why I like it, especially landscape photography, is that there's, ironically though, that there's so much tech that we're surrounded by, like sitting in front of a computer all the time and emailing and being on the phone all the time, being constantly connected, being able to disconnect, drive out, 6 hours into the countryside and just sit there, go camping and just run around with the camera and just take some photos. Sort of gets me away from things, even though there's still a little bit of tech involved, but it's not the same sort.
Switch your phone off, just
Yeah.
disappear for a little bit. I think everybody needs to do that every now and again.
The irony though is it's still a camera and a drone, but
So you still love the tech stuff.
Yeah, just a little bit. There's a little bit of tech still in there, but being able to get away and just be in that moment.
Yep. Is that your sort of form of meditation to a degree?
Yeah.
Sort of just getting away and doing that.
Packing the swag and picking a direction and driving and seeing where I end up. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Andrew, thank you very much for coming in for a chat.
No, thanks for having me.
Got some good stuff, I think, from the chat. And where can people, if they do want to connect or find out more about you or say hello, where's the best place for them to connect with you?
Either through our website, digitbooks.com.au, or just by email, just andrew@digitbooks.com.au, or people can find us on Instagram or Twitter and a million and one other social media channels. So you can find us.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, and I'm sure you probably need to get home to feed the dog.
Yeah, hopefully it hasn't been neglected too much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.